Welcome to the We Can Do It Women movement, where women 60 and wiser step into the spotlight and make the rest of their lives the best of their lives. I'm your host, Debra Morrison, a wealth building expert and champion for extraordinary women just like you. For over 47 years, I've helped women secure their financial futures, and now I'm on a mission to ignite a revolution. Right. Showing the world that at 60, 70, and beyond, we're not slowing down. We're just getting started. And today's We Can Do It Women expert interview features Dr. Corinne Auman, who's a distinguished gerontologist with over 20 years experience working directly with older adults and their families. She's widely recognized for her expertise in the field of aging, caregiving, and age-related policy and advocacy. Boy, do we need that. Dr. Corinne, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Indeed, indeed. So I want to give our audience some of the background of your trajectory, if you will, into this field. I so appreciate it. And you have studied and gotten your PhD in developmental psychology with your specialty in adulthood and aging from North Carolina State University. And you founded then and are the CEO of Choice Care Navigators, a company you've dedicated to helping families navigate the complexities of aging, healthcare, and elder care management. And of course, I love that navigating word because it's so complex. And I love the fact that you continue to seed in your articles and so forth that word complex, because there is nothing simple about aging if in fact we have an open mind toward it. And your whole life is about giving us a more expansive view, if you will, of the possibilities of our aged community. So talk to us about how you decided to form and found Choice Care Navigators.
So I grew up right next door to my grandparents, and in 8th grade, my grandfather passed away fairly suddenly. Like, he got sick and then a few weeks later he passed away. And when that happened, my mom and her sister realized very quickly that their mother, my grandmother, had dementia. And my grandfather had been doing such a good job of protecting her and taking care of her that they really had no idea how bad it was. And so they went overnight from having 2 parents to having 1 parent, and that 1 parent needed 24-hour care, which they did not realize. So I watched them caregive from the time I was in 8th grade until I was a junior in college when my grandmother passed away. And that experience, watching them, try to find care, try to find caregivers, make mistakes along the way, in terms of placement, different things that were happening, hiring the wrong caregivers, things like that, or caregivers that didn't work out. I shouldn't say wrong per se, but that whole experience just really was foundational in the sense that I thought, why isn't there somebody who actually helps you with this, right? Like, why isn't there someone who gives you actual guidance and support about what you can do and what the options are and helps you find those things? So I went on to college and then to graduate school. And again, developmental psychology, focusing on older adults. And then I went into teaching. I taught at universities for a number of years, and then finally kind of looked at my husband and said, how I've always said I wanted to start that business, like helping people navigate this stuff. It's only gotten more complex in those intervening years, because in that time, like, assisted living had come about, and there's just all the different opportunities for different kinds of care.
Yes.
And so 12 years ago, I started the business and, made that leap.
And, I read a lot about your work and so forth. And of course, I have your book on my Kindle, and I have it right here. I was just going to show everyone, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, which is amazing because I've not read the whole thing quite yet, but I'm really enjoying it as I'm going along. And your work a lot predates a lot of the work on gerontology per se, right? I mean, that kind of, came into the spotlight while you were knee deep into it. So that's kind of an amazing trailblaze, if you will. And we credit you and thank you for that, because wow, it is a field that's shifting fairly swiftly, I think. I mean, in the one hand, you're like, oh my gosh, we're a society that doesn't deal well with aging. And I'm actually a certified grief coach, and I don't think we deal well with death, frankly. I wrote a book about my husband died, now what? A Widow's Guide to Grief Recovery and Smart Financial Decisions. All of these are chapters, if we're lucky, right? If we don't die prematurely, our chapters that we're going to go through, or someone we love is going to go through, and how powerful your work is, Dr. Auman, on the choices that we now have. So talk us through this. If I read correctly, you were thinking as you started, you're probably going to deal with 50-year-olds whose parents are like 70, and then it was a little different.
Yeah, yeah. So, I have this degree on, working with older adults, right? And I thought so naively when I started my business that I was going to work with 50-year-olds who were caring for 80, maybe 70, maybe 80-year-old parents. And what I have found is that I'm working with 70-year-olds who are caring for their 90-something-year-old parents. It is very different than what I would have expected. And that's part of how the book came about, because it's this realization that, I have all this training and experience with older adults, and yet I had it so wrong. And if I have it so wrong in terms of what my stereotypes are, what I thought was going to be the truth, then I know everybody else people who don't work in this field really aren't paying attention, right? Like they believe the stereotypes about older adulthood and what's going to happen and when you should retire and just all these things that if you've never really paid attention to how much it has changed, how much older adulthood itself has changed, then yeah, you have no idea. You have no idea what's happening.
Yeah. And I'm cottoning into your word should, right? We have a lot of shoulds in this society about aging, and boy, I want to keep those shoulds in the should pile, because wow, we are filled with opportunities. Now, you talked about, I think I'm remembering this, your grandfather was like kind of covering for your grandmother. And I mean, in the day, it was like a societal kind of like a shunting kind of a thing to say you even had cancer, for the love of God, right? So I mean, silliness when we look at it now, and yet there were these societal taboos that whatever systems came through us and our system, our family systems, and so I wouldn't doubt that he kind of wanted to protect so that no, people wouldn't think, well, she's crazy, or that she's less than, and she just would have tried hard, So I'm really supportive of your work, and the fact that it's busting through these notions is life-giving, because I mean, now both of my parents are gone, and yet there was a certain caregiving chapter to both of their lives, and that was fraught with a whole bunch of decisions. So talk to us about planning, because I am a 42-year boots on the ground certified financial planner, and now I'm a financial coach, but I so love the act of planning, and yet so few people engage in it. Talk to us about how that can really assuage a lot of the angst around this next unknown chapter generally.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. The first one is, caregiving and care receiving should be a expected and planned for part of your life. I think we have this sort of societal notion that independence is the goal, right? The independence is always the goal forevermore. And if you end up in a situation where you need care, that you have somehow failed, right? Which is ridiculous. We are human beings. We have to rely on one another, right? So their caregiving and care receiving should be a normal, planned for part of life. And it's really not. I mean, we act like if we just don't talk about it and we just don't think about it, that it will never happen to us, right? So I really want people to take a second and go, would this go better if maybe we thought about it ahead of time, right? If we did some planning in advance. And so it's the things that, as a financial planner, we need to plan financially for these years. Right. Absolutely. Money is very important. The other piece of it, though, is we need to plan for if I were to need care, because 7 out of 10 of us will need care at some point. If I were to need care, what kind of care would I want, right? Do I want to stay at home? Okay, I want to stay at home. That's my goal. Do I need to do home renovations to make that happen? Do I have a bedroom and a bathroom on the first floor that's going to be accessible to me so I don't have to go up and down stairs? I mean, if you want to stay at home, that's fantastic. But we need to think in advance about, is this the house that we can stay home in? And if it's not, do we want to move? Do we want to renovate? What do we want? What's that going to cost? Those kinds of things. And then if I don't want to stay at home, if I think I want to move, well, where do I want to move? Like, do I want to move to be closer with my children? Like, do I want to go where they live? Do I want to stay where I am? What are the retirement communities that are close to me? Which ones are the good ones? How much do they cost? I mean, just all these things. And I think, it's kind of it's an anti-caregiving, anti-care receiving notion that we have, but it's also an ageism thing, right? Because if I'm going to plan for caregiving and care receiving, I also have to acknowledge that I'm aging. And somehow we have it in our heads that aging happens to other people, not to us. And I got news for you.
That's right. It's here.
It's here. We will be older at the end of this live stream than we were at the beginning. It's also, aging is so cool. Everybody's doing it. So just getting over that notion that we can't talk about it. We can't admit that we're aging. We can't deal with it because then somehow that will protect us from ever having any sort of issues in life.
Yeah. Well, now you're just completely right. The effects of ageism, this societal, ka-chung, like this, all these like edicts that come down on our shoulders, and now we're in slower, like shorter. Because, and you talk a lot about finding purpose for older people to continue to find purpose. Like you talk about the old dream, like you didn't retire at 65, now you can do whatever you want. And then after whatever, depending upon the personality, 6 months, 2 years, you're like, is this all there is?
Mm-hmm.
That I'm done with the accolades, because I walked into a boardroom, everyone clapped or like they paid attention, and then we don't have that in our home. And so I want to have you opine on the aspect of, if we could change society, and you are about doing that with your life's work, if we could change society to not dismiss our older adults and cause them to feel useless, how would you see the next couple practical aspects needing to change, so that as people aged and they got 70 and 80, they still felt a sense of societal purpose? They can feel purposeful, but I want society to feel their purpose.
I think the biggest thing there, and I actually just filmed a social media post on this that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks, but the biggest thing here is stopping the way we talk about the older population, where you hear the words, the silver tsunami, like it's this wave of older people that's going to crash on us and just, it's going to kill everybody because, it's going to be so bad. And if we could reframe that to really look at this large generation of older adults that we have, if we could look at them as a resource, as an opportunity, rather than this horrible thing that's happening, right? This doomsday sort of scenario. Because if you think about the collective years of experience and knowledge that you have sitting there, if you think about the expertise, if you think about the number of potential volunteer hours, right, that could be put to use. And one of the biggest problems I actually see with some of the people I've worked with, they want to be doing stuff, but they feel like places don't want them, right? Like they want to be volunteering, but they either don't know where the opportunities are, or they feel like, well, they don't really want me there. And so it is that sort of ageism, right? That perception that I am not wanted or needed out here in the larger society that keeps people from contributing fully, right? There are lots of older adults who are contributing, they're volunteering, they're doing stuff, they're starting their own nonprofits if nobody else won't take them, that kind of thing. But there is still a huge missed opportunity for mentorship, for volunteering, for all kinds of things, if we would just set society up so that those opportunities were easy to find and that people felt welcome. And instead, yeah, we just kind of say, oh, you've retired, you go off and have a good time. We don't really need you for anything anymore. And that doesn't feel good to anybody.
Right. Being put out the pasture. I mean, I was raised on a farm. It's not a good concept, I can tell you. Now, this whole concept of not even, I love it because obviously there are a number of people in our community. We're rife with a lot of people that are doing wonderful things as they age. And yet, I want us to be mindful in our 60s and 70s, if we still have older relatives, to pop them in our car and take them to places that already have some older volunteers, because that kind of community is a gorgeous thing, right? And so like the library and stuff, like places where like a misstep isn't going to like derail the entire operation, right?
Sure.
So I want us to be mindful of, you know, entities in our own communities and volunteer opportunities where maybe a paucity of older people are volunteering, and then let's drive our olders to, that's a horrible word, let's drive our parents, relatives, whatever, to these places so that they can be in relationship with other people similarly aged and then a generation below them. So I'm completely there. Now, talk to us about the choice of senior living in communities, because obviously you deal with that a lot. There are a whole host of variables. Just tick them off for us.
Of like how you would choose or what would make you choose?
Yeah, right.
So I think budget's the number one thing, right? So you've got to have the financial capacity to do those things. And so planning financially is a huge one. The other thing I always advise people to do is start shopping early. Start shopping before you think you're actually going to need a community, because that way you can go visit. These communities love to have you come partake in their activities and visit with the residents who live there, so that way you've really got a feel for it before you move in. And also, you know people, right? Like you already know some of the residents, you've got friends there, that kind of thing. I always advise people too, if you're going into any kind of like assisted living or memory care and you're shopping for that, talk to the staff, right? Like ask the staff how long they've worked there, because what you want is longevity. You don't want, if every person you talk to that works there has been there 6 months or less, that's not a good sign.
No,
And the other thing is, you want to talk to residents and see if they're happy too, right? Like, do they like the quality of care that they're getting? And don't worry so much about the beauty of the building, because the wallpaper is not going to actually offer care. And so that's why talking to the residents and the staff is so much more important than just whether or not it's fancy.
I couldn't agree more. And moreover, once you're in, if you choose a community rather than retrofit your home, then once you're inside the community and maybe you're one building of residence, if you will, you're probably not going to go out and drive back in, a million times to see the brick on the outside. I mean, you're going to be kind of in the scope of things. I love to suggest to people to go to the dining room and sit with people, because like now it's a little relaxed, you're waiting to get served and now you're chit-chatting and you can get to the crux of things like, hey, how's it going? And then you can look around and see the wait staff is courteous. I mean, there's a place north of me that is pretty amazing, and all of their workers go through this huge training so that they are treating those residents with the utmost of respect. And then I've been in other communities where it is so different. And so this kind of experimentation, visiting. Now also, let's talk about like if your kids don't live near you, because sometimes that's the case. So it's that tussle of, do we have the parents stay or the aunt stay in an environment where she knows a ton of friends? Or is it more apropos, especially if we're talking about something more serious, memory care and so forth, where there's going to be probably the greater need for a family member to be present? Would it be better to be located near that?
Yeah. I think this is a hard decision and unique to every family, because the pro of moving closer to your children is that they are going to be able to visit more often, right? And if you are in at a level where you're needing a lot of care, memory care, skilled nursing, something like that, having people visit and, having the staff know that somebody's coming by and is gonna, be checking things, asking questions, that's important. It really is. So if that higher level of care, you want to be somewhere where somebody's going to be coming by. But maybe if you, stay where you have a lot of friends, it'll be your friends, right? Your friends and neighbors who do that very thing. It could also be someone like a care manager who can come in and do those same things if it's really important that you stay in your current location. The pro of staying where you are, all your friends are there, your doctors are there, your church is there. And for a lot of older adults, the idea of leaving the community that they've been in for a really long time, they love their children, but they don't want to give up 20 plus years of friends, family, doctors, church, all the things. And I mean, that would be really scary. So I think every family has to weigh it out. I have had more than one conversation with adult children who really thought their parents needed to move to them and say, where I've had to say, well, would you like to pick up and move and leave all the things to be closer? And they're like, well, no. Well, why do you expect your parent to want to do those same things? You are wonderful and they love you, but also they want to keep the connections that they've had their whole life.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. And then, of course, my parents were able to walk down to a different wing in that very place, because a lot of the people that were there were residents of that little community. So there's that. You talk about, and I'm going to put in the show notes, Jeff Armstrong's Aging Well podcast. You're on episode 254, and it's a fantastic interview where you're talking about the complexities of aging, care management, and the cultural perceptions surrounding older adults. And you absolutely are in an advocacy mode with regard to abolishing some of the myths of aging. So talk to us about some of the myths that maybe quite so obvious to some of us.
So I think the biggest thing you have to understand is your older adulthood today is not your grandparents' older adulthood. So when Social Security was first put into place in the 1930s, the average American lifespan was about 67.
Yes, indeed.
But we were expecting you to retire at 65, have a couple of years, and then it's going to be over. Now the average lifespan is like 77. So if you retire at 65, you're looking at another decade, not just a couple of years. And that's just the average. We have more centenarians, people living to 100, and super centenarians, people living to 110 than we've ever had before in human history. So this is a new experience, right? We have never had people living this long, this healthy, as long as they are. And so it's really an extended middle adulthood. Older adulthood today, and this is so silly. We say older adulthood starts at 65. Okay, so you're 65 and you're an older adult, and you're 95 and you're an older adult. There is no other time in life where we would put two people 30 years apart together in the same age group and be like, yeah, you two are basically the same.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is like telling a 12-year-old and a 42-year-old that you're the same, right?
No worries. Yeah.
So the first thing to understand when you're trying to break down misconceptions about aging is how much it has changed in the last 100 years. I mean, just tremendous change in what the older adulthood experience is like. There is so much more older adulthood to experience in the first place.
Yes. Exactly.
But I think the number one misconception is that it's all downhill, right? That it's all going to be terrible, and it's something to dread. And that is one of the reasons my book is called Keenagers, Keen, is because the definition of keen means highly developed or having a sharp or significant interest in something. Like I'm keen on that.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a couple of reasons I use that word. Number one, try to find positive words about older adulthood. right? Like just go do a Google search and try to find them.
Yeah,
It's really hard.
it's hard.
So we need positive words to talk about this age group. And number two, I think Keenagers really describes what older adulthood is like today. So our 65, 70, 75, 80-year-olds, they are still keen to engage with the world, to be active, to be engaged. They want to volunteer. They may start a new business. They are doing all kinds of things that we don't think about being part of older adulthood. That we think, yeah, you've got your gold watch, you sell off into the sunset, and we don't see you anymore. It's all relaxation, but they are really keen to engage with life. And it is such a misconception to think that it's all going to be downhill and it's going to be terrible and it's something to dread.
Yes.
It's really not. There is so much opportunity in your outlook on it. That positive aging outlook is a tremendous influence on how well it actually goes. So Dr. Becca Levy up at the Yale School of Public Health has done this study, and she's replicated it many times in many different countries, that basically shows if you have a positive outlook about your aging experience, you live on average 7.5 years longer than people who have a negative outlook. You also walk faster. You have less risk of all kinds of diseases. I mean, and it's just like, yeah, we gotta change our attitude about the whole thing.
Yeah, the attitude and the languaging is so critical, Dr. Corinne. This how we speak is so very, very evident, and it really gives us away as to what we're feeling, right? And so I want to get into your book because when I saw the title, I just beamed because, like, you think agers, you think teenagers, of course, right? And then you get keen, and like, of course, I went right to, of course, these people are brilliant and they're eager and they're curious, and it kind of just melds them in with younger people because of that agers thing. So that is phenomenal. Telling a new story about aging, winning. All right, everybody, the Independent Press Award, Aging Midlife Winner category, Independent Press Award, 2024 Independent Press Award. This is a fantastic book, and I have it here on my Kindle. Read a lot of it. The Demographics in Society, Keenagers, the medical system doesn't understand. Caregiving is normal. Family planning isn't just for babies. I love that one. Navigating healthcare for caregivers, ageism, rethinking retirement, life design for teenagers. Conclusion. I'm telling you guys, I read through this book, and I think I didn't count them. I think there are 14 pages in the prologue of reference material. Dr. Corinne has gone to the mat with this in reading about aging and how we can morph away from that old aspect of decline, decline, decline. So talk to us about what spawned you. You reference Eric Erickson's stage of psychosocial development, which I really applaud. So talk to us about when you got the itch to write the book and how long it took you and so forth and so on.
So it's really funny because when it took me about a year once I actually made myself sit down and start doing it, because I've been talking about writing it for about 5 years. And then once I actually took myself to the mat and said, okay, we got to do this, it took about a year. But when I started writing it, it's really funny because I'm not sure I quite knew what I was going to write. I just knew I had to get something out, because it's like, you just know, right? Like there's this thing. And I really thought I was going to start writing about care management and about my experience, like working with these families and how different it was than what I expected and things like that. And that is in the book for sure. But it did kind of morph into this like larger advocacy sort of piece where it's like, this is not only a different care management story than what I thought it was going to be. It's really a different life story than what I thought it was going to be. And, you mentioned Erickson. I would be so interested, today to say, okay, Erickson, let's go back, because now we've got all that, like even when he was putting together that original theory, we didn't have all these years, right? Like that, the lifespan was much shorter. And so what how would we even categorize these new stages of development? Because that's really what they are. You've got these new stages that we as a society have not quite figured out what to do with just yet.
Yeah, you talk about that, urging society to recognize the value, capabilities, and contributions of people at every stage of life. And then you have a term, if I can get to it quickly, if not, I'll ask a different question. Yeah, this term just jumped off the page to me. Biopsychosocial approach. So that's brilliant. Talk to us.
Well, that's not my original idea. That's like a way to approach the study of really almost anything, but with humans, this idea that biology plays a role in how we're going to age, right? Social roles, social interactions, socioeconomic status is going to play a role in how we age. And then the psychological piece of it, what are we saying in our own heads? What is the story we are telling ourselves about how this is going to go? And so, any one person, how they age is going to be an interplay of those different factors, right? We all have genetics. We've all got that to deal with, but that's really only about 30%.
I was going to say 30. I was remembering you're in the 30% for the genetics, and then the rest is environment, our thoughts.
Yeah. So the rest of it is the psychosocial piece. And you've got a lot more control over those pieces than you really think you do. And that's the thing. You can shape how much or how this aging experience is going to go. 70% of it you get to play around with in terms of your choices, your lifestyle, what you're thinking about, how you're approaching your health, all those things.
And that is so valuable, because there is this notion that I can't do anything about it. Oh, my mother was diabetic, oh, this and that. And I was in New York with a geneticist, and he was just like blowing that to bits. It's just like, hey, we are really changing, and your mind can help heal various things that are perhaps genetic and so forth. So this whole aspect of us having 70, I want that to land with everyone, 70% we're in charge of. So no more acquiescing, I'm just gonna do whatever I'm doing, or I'll let the kids handle it. Nonsense. Let's just step in. And you talk about championing a strengths-based, holistic, and personal centered approach to aging. I think that this is certainly a family affair. And when you talk about having family conversations, I couldn't agree more that we ought to be starting these pretty early on. Because I'll tell you what really upsets people are the unexpected, right? We kind of expect, all right, unless you're betting something new, you're going to be dying, but you're not really sure you're going to be dying when you're 50 or you're 60. So it's incumbent upon us, I think, to be about these conversations, and so that we can open the channels, if you will, with our whole family, so that we're not going to be mum on this. No, we're not. We're going to be expressing exactly how we're feeling, and we're going to leave it open to, well, let's just see how that kind of unfolds. But we have this and this and this. Like I always love a ton of options. So talk to us about when people come to your center and maybe they haven't conversed, and how do you introduce the family into communication?
Well, I got to be honest, it's very rare that they come in early enough that we're really having conversations like that. I'd say about 5% of my care management business is that. I would love to have more. If people want to have that earlier, that's great, because then we can really talk about like, what are the options? And again, like if we're going to do home renovations, we want to do those before you actually need them, right? And that's the thing I hear people say all the time. Oh, I'll do that when I need to. By the time you need to, it's too late, right? You needed it done so that you can use it now. But the thing about having these conversations, again, I think people don't do it because it's sort of this, I'm going to bury my head in the sand, and if we don't talk about it, then that means it'll never happen. If you are wanting to have these conversations with your loved ones, I always suggest baby steps, right? Like you don't want to sit down over Thanksgiving dinner and be like, okay, let's plan out everything that's going to happen for the next 20 years. Mom, where do you want to be buried? And do you
Oh,
want
yeah.
to, like, don't do that. It's baby steps. It's small conversations over time. And some people are going to be really open to it and some people aren't. But the thing is, the more you do it, the more normalized it becomes. So for example, my son just turned 18. And the first thing I did was set him up an appointment with an attorney to do his healthcare power of attorney and his financial power of attorney.
I am so proud of you.
He did those documents 5 days after he turned 18, because those are things that everyone should have. This is not a older adult issue. This is an everybody issue, because if something happens and you are not able to speak for yourself, you're in a car accident, whatever it is, who's going to speak for you? And everybody kind of just assumes, oh, my spouse or my parents or whoever. But like for my son, once he's 18, they don't have to talk to me.
No, they do not.
Yeah, because he's an adult. And, would they talk to me eventually? Yes. But like, what if my husband and I disagree about what's supposed to happen, right? I want one thing to happen. He wants something else. That's when you end up in court, right? Because nobody has the authority to make decisions. So if we can normalize doing those documents, everybody having them, make this sort of an everyday conversation, well, then it's not such a big deal to do it, because if an 18-year-old's doing it, then a 60-year-old be like, well, yeah, I need to do that. I'm an adult. It's something adults should do. But because we have made it this sort of older adult thing, people don't want to do it, because then they have to admit, oh, I'm aging. I'm an older adult. And I hear people say things like that. I hear people say, oh, I'll do it when it's time. Or I hear people, you need a will. No, the state, everything's just going to my kids anyway. It'll be fine. It's like,
Oh boy.
Yeah, no, that you are creating a logistical nightmare for your family. And it's just, again, some people will be more open than others. The one thing I will, if your family members won't listen to you, maybe try enlisting a trusted advisor of some kind. Maybe it's their financial advisor, maybe it's their minister, maybe it's their doctor, but somebody that they know and respect, whose diaper they did not change, right? And get that person to suggest these things or be involved, because having that trusted advisor say, hey, this is stuff you really need to do, or things you need to be thinking about, sometimes that sinks in more than a family member.
I can't agree more. And I want to point out to our audience that you're a nationally certified guardian. You're a certified senior advisor. You're an advanced professional member of the Aging Life Care Association. I mean, these are impressive credentials. And I couldn't agree more that every person needs to set out their power of attorney. And then I prefer, if it's someone that you really trust, that you make that durable, because boy, going to the courts and trying to prove that your loved one is really disabled, it's demeaning, first of all, especially if they come in and out of lucidity. It's just a nightmare, and people don't even understand it. So like, have a power of attorney. Now the other thing that I say, and maybe you've had this, I happen to be lesbian, so I that wasn't going to be recognized in any hospital, right? So I had my then partner as my power of attorney. Now, do we see that? Do we have that housed in our home office in our file cabinet in the day? No, I had it copied and I shrunk it down, and I had a copy in my glove compartment of my car, and she had a copy in her glove compartment in her car, because if we're in an accident, we're not driving home before we go to the hospital. So these things that we think of maybe after the fact, I think are so much easier to plan ahead. Now let's talk about we can tell a story. It's not that far-fetched to say, I heard a story or I read about someone that, all of a sudden couldn't speak, right? And I want to, have this conversation. And once you've had that initial conversation, most likely that initial conversation is going to be a little dicey, right? If you keep kind of revisiting that in a couple of weeks, couple months. Now it's much more in vogue to be in conversation about it. So
I want to say one thing about what you said about having the documents. You had them in your car. Here's the thing: once you've done the documents, do not put them in your filing cabinet and not tell anybody where they are, or put them in a safe deposit box that nobody but you has the key to, right? Like, if the documents are not easily accessible, then they don't do you any good. Really, you should have them done and then give copies to everybody who's named in them. So like whoever you've named as your powers of attorney, they should have copies. Maybe your lawyer should have copies, but there should be copies in lots of places so that they can be gotten to at a moment's notice. Do not lock them away. That is a terrible mistake.
Appreciate your bringing that up. And now with the age of, Dropbox and everything else, most of us can have that on our cell phones. And then the people that are named will say, hey, wait a minute, where's your phone? And find it in that fashion. The other thing that was impressive, many impressive facts about you and your work, that you're expressing hope for a future where older adults are viewed as complex individuals with rights and privileges.
Yeah.
Wow.
So here's the thing. So and I don't know what age this happens at, but somehow as people get older, we stop seeing them as whole people with rights, privileges, wants, desires, sexuality. I mean, I'm sorry, somebody at 80 has all the same emotions and wants and needs that somebody much younger has. And yet somehow our perception of them changes, right? As people get older, we start thinking they don't have the right to those things. Or especially I see a lot of adult children, they really want to keep their parents safe when what their parent wants is freedom. So for example, I've had a lot of families over the years where the adult child is arguing that the parent needs to move out of the house to keep them safe. And the parent is saying, if I die in this house, I will have died happy. I'm fine. And so it's this push-pull between safety and having a life. Right. And it's just amazing to me sometimes the way we talk about people as they get older and how we almost don't view them as full human beings the way we view a 50-year-old as a full human being. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a full human being the whole time. And the World Health Organization has actually, they talk about human rights and they have all the different human rights listed. And you can go through those and just kind of look and think to yourself, well, would an older adult really have that right? Like the right to work if they want to, the right to healthcare, the right to, just all these things. And it's like, do we really see them as full humans? And that's a goal. I mean, I think that's actually a really big goal to change how society thinks about it that way.
I think you've hit a very, very sensitive topic. And it feels to me like sometimes people in my age group, I'm 69, people in my age group, we're a little busy, right?
Yeah.
And so it would be so much neater and tidier if we can just kind of make the decisions for them and we button it up. Mm-hmm. Rather than imagining that they still are creative, they're still bright, they're still funny, they're still witty, they're still smart, mm-hmm. and inviting them to have the panoply of choices that we're going to want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's this notion that from an expediency standpoint, we're just going to make the decision and we're going to present it to them. Nope, mom, you're going to do that, and mm-hmm. I want to invite us to be more curious, right? And to be more patient. And I think the way in which we get this started, although I'll defer to you, is to continue to think of them as viable and consult them with certain things that are going on in our life, because it's likely that they have an opinion and it probably is pretty darn smart. And for us to segue them into a non-persona, non-advisor role when they are still sometimes related to us, often related to us, is really then we're too busy, as far as I'm concerned. Then we're just too busy.
Yeah. Well, and the main thing I would say is when you're in those moments, think, is this how I want to be treated? Is
That's
this how I would want to be treated, or how I would want to be spoken to? Just that's the real question. And if it is, okay, cool. You're probably doing pretty well. But if you think, oh, I'd hate it if somebody talked to me this way, then maybe it's time to, like you said, take a breath, take a moment, and go, let me try this again.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think to circle back, because of the uncertainty, I mean, it's uncertain life. We're in a very uncertain time, and yet aging is uncertain. And I mean, they were fine until they started to slur their words, right? And sometimes it can happen like that. And
Absolutely.
so when you're lucky enough to have a couple, for example, as the people that are going to, kind of help with the caregiving, then, one person going to have one take on it and the other person going to have the other take. And the best advice, I think, is for everybody to put their best foot forward and say, hey, maybe this and maybe that, because we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. There's more that we don't know than what we do know. And that is going to continue to shift. Now, you talk about the whole trajectory, if you will. Yeah, we have much more opportunity now for people to stay in their home. I mean, in the old days, everybody's like, oh, don't put me in a nursing home, right? Well, it was pretty bad. Those nursing homes were pretty dire, right? And so they're much more vibrant now. And yet we didn't have the kind of 24-hour nursing care, traveling nurses that we now have. You go to care.com, for example, which we did. And we didn't have that. And so we're now getting to those places, and we have homes that can be retrofitted. This is like insurance. You've got to buy it before you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then remind yourself that people aren't tending to sell their houses and move into something smaller. They're kind of maintaining that big house. Right. And so, but rather than think of putting rails in and grab bars on your tub as dinging the resale, I got another thought coming for you. It's probably going to add to your resale, because wouldn't I like to buy a home that's already retrofitted for wheelchair access? That answer is yes.
Well, and there's lots of like universal design ideas.
Yeah.
Universal design is design that's good for everybody. So it's good for people who have a disability or in a wheelchair, things like that. But it's also just really aesthetically nice. There was a house that was just built in my neighborhood, and they did a zero entry front entrance. There's no steps on the front entrance, and it's this beautiful patterned concrete that they did, so it kind of looks like rock, but it's not. And it's gorgeous, but it's perfect for someone who in the future might think, I'm going to have that rather than having to install a ramp later, things like that. So there are universal design things that you can do that look beautiful but are very, very useful. Even grab bars, you can get really nice looking grab bars. They do not have to be the industrial ones that you see in the restaurants and things.
Right.
You can, but that takes a little more time. They're a little more expensive, and you have to be thinking, okay, what do I want to have here? Let me shop around for it, versus I needed this yesterday. Let's just install whatever we can find.
Well, that's it. And you have to make a swift decision. It's typically not the best decision. Talk to us about the COVID-19 pandemic causing there to be a shift, which actually now is beneficial to some people that are aging and might need telehealth.
Oh, telehealth has been huge for people now. That really didn't exist much. I mean, it existed, but it wasn't really utilized much. Medicare didn't even cover it prior to COVID-19. But today, that is so much more accessible, readily used, can be covered under your Medicare plans, most of them. And such an advantage to not have to, especially if you have any sort of mobility issue, to not have to get the trip out of the house every time. So much better for caregivers too, because it can be an all day experience to try to get out of the house, get to the doctor's appointment, wait at the doctor's office, all those things.
All those.
And so telehealth has just been kind of a game changer for a lot of seniors and their caregivers.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And so then when you get in the car and you take your relative out, you're going out to lunch and it's fun.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
don't have this
yeah,
notion that, oh, my back hurts, I'm not gonna get in the car. Wait, we're going out to your favorite restaurant and we're gonna
yeah.
have, lunch together. So I am completely about that. So your book, and I recommend it highly on Amazon, Keenagers, telling a new story about aging. And it's firsthand interviews. She's interviewing people left and right, and they're giving their real life examples about how it is that they're aging. And I had read just about a couple months ago, of course, I'm still reading about finances and so forth, and very interested in retirement planning types of ideas. And we're like, we never thought that we would have three generations, Dr. Corinne, three generations of retired people. One of them is 102, one of them is 80, and one of them is 60, and they're all healthy.
Yeah.
How about that? Well, there's a whole host of issues around that. One, we expected those people that are, north of 90 to be, one, dead, and two, if not, very impaired. And two, they didn't die. And so no inheritance per se might have come down to the next generation, or certainly the third generation. So now people are
Mhm.
maybe scarfing around a nickel for some financing to do this. So this is so relevant to the the benefits, the huge benefits of planning, because with planning you can do so much. And when you plan in advance, as you said, you're not backed into a corner saying, okay, I'll have to have that overnighted, nonsense. Let's be about facing life as we're experiencing it. And that requires us to be open-minded and curious and observant, and certainly loving towards our family members. What other final things might you have to share with us that I haven't touched on, and I'm sorry that I didn't?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. My biggest thing is, we talked about like how you think about aging and how much that matters in terms of how well it goes. The number one thing I think people can do is look inside their own self, their own mind, and start questioning the ageist thoughts that they have. Because really combating ageism is an inside job. You have been raised in this culture that is so anti-aging, right? And they really make a lot of money off of us,
Yes, they
because of that. And you are ageist. All of us are ageist, and we
yeah.
can't help it. We've been raised in this society, in this soup for years, and we've been cooking in this soup for years and years and years. So the first thing you have to do is listen to your own self about what you are saying to yourself about, am I too old to wear that? Or, oh, there's a wrinkle, or whatever it is, and going, okay, why do I think that? Is that true? And you will be amazed once you start actually paying attention. You will be amazed what you think, and you'll be amazed what you start noticing that everybody else is saying. Because it's like,
Yeah.
people don't know how to not make ageist jokes. It's just such a part of the conversation. They say it, and they just think, oh, I'm being funny. It's like, that's just what we say, oh, you look good for your age. That's just what
Yes.
we say. I'm sorry. Like,
Hello.
why can't I just look good? Why does
Yeah.
it have to have anything to do with my age? And I'm not immune to this either, but I catch myself now. I say things and then I go, what did I just say? My husband and I were in New York, and I had some headphones, AirPods, and I was trying to get them to connect to my phone. And I said, oh, these are my old ones. They're just old and cranky. They won't connect. And my husband looked at me and he said, well, that's ageist. And I went, oh no. And so, I mean, you do. It's amazing what you hear yourself say when you're really paying attention. So it's not something you're going to change overnight, but it's something that is worth working on.
100%. And the other little facet that I wanted to bring in is this active grandparent thing that you talk about. This notion, like, we're busy, right? So if we have kids and they're gone to soccer or dance or wherever they're going, and we're like, oh, we don't have time to, and interject our parents into their lives. No, I want us to take our kids to the grandparents and show them the film of it, or take the grandparents to the game, because this interrelationship between the generations, you can just skip that middle. Those people, the kids are like enamored with wrinkles. I mean, the kids are just loving the wrinkles,
I
and
love it.
the older people are loving to be touched, right? So let's
Mhm.
just keep our generation out of it, but we do need to be the forum for those two generations to come together. And when it can happen in a family, I think it continues to keep our older relatives a lot younger and engaged and more interested. And what young kid doesn't want yet another adult, typically an adoring adult, say, "That a girl, Sarah, nice job," you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a quick story about the hands. Growing up, I loved my grandmother's hands. I loved my mother's hands. Like, I loved it when I could play with the veins in her hands. Like, I thought they were amazing. And so now, as I'm getting older and my hands are changing, I'm having this sort of internal struggle where I'm like, okay, I really loved this before. How am I feeling about it now? And it's so interesting because, like, I'm on this anti-ageism, campaign. I'm like, okay, I really want to love my hands. How am I loving my hands today? But every day we got to work on it every day.
We do. And that is the conscious awareness that is really at the key of any type of change that we're about. It's going to happen in stages, especially when there's such, generations and, a lot of years behind the socialization. So how can our people get in touch with you to talk more and to ask you questions?
Sure. So you can go to my website, which is just my name, CorinneAuman.com. And there you can find the book and a contact me form and other media things. Anything you want to know, it's probably there.
Excellent. Well, I am so appreciative of your time spending it with us and investing in our richness. And I'm really grateful to take away a lot of new insights myself. And I will continue to finish your book because it's snappy and I really like it. And so thank you all for joining us on today's We Can Do It Women show. Remember, I see you, I value you, and your greatest chapter is just beginning. If today's episode sparks something in you about how we can move into our next chapter with more verve and curiosity and empowerment, I invite you to join us in the south of France on our retreat, October 25th through November 1st. Yes, we're going to a refurbished chateau, and we're going to have a personal chef and eat French food and drink French wines and French cheeses, farm to table meals, and we are going to learn, how to make money, because I'm going to give morning sessions on how to create our own wealth. So what's better than to tax deduct a retreat in a great location and learn how to make money? Because last year we had women leave there and they are still making money from the steps that we took step by step to get them on the track. This is not namby-pamby. This is boots on the ground. I've helped people for 42 years make money, create their own wealth, and I'm helping you. Pop over with us to France. It is an epic experience. And I invite you to go to wecandoitwomen.com/retreats. wecandoitwomen.com/retreats. Sign up for early access. You'll get your choice of rooms and so forth and so on. So I can't wait to see you there. And thank you again, Dr. Corinne. It's been our pleasure. Good day.
Thank you so much.